Before the world called her a liar, they called her a curse. The pain began in silence, deep, low, ancient. A groan of bone and blood that bloomed in Selena Morrow's belly just past midnight. She was 19, flat on her back on a rusted gurney inside Briarfield State Hospital, where tiles cracked underfoot and fluorescent lights buzzed like insects. No family, no visitor, no emergency contact. Just the girl who'd passed through 17 foster homes, now screaming in a labor ward with only the ghosts of her childhood as witnesses. Her water had broken an hour earlier in a bus terminal bathroom. She had taken 3 buses and walked the rest, her sweat mixed with the stench of antiseptic and ammonia. Nurses moved around her with practiced coldness, gloved hands, and distant eyes. She had begged them to call someone, anyone, but they just told her to breathe. Selena had no one, no mother's hand to squeeze, no father pacing the floor, no boyfriend, no baby bag, no plan. The contractions came like waves, violent full-body seizures that left her sobbing and hollow. A young nurse with trembling fingers whispered, "You'll be all right, honey." But her words were as empty as the hallway. The attending nurse, older and sharper, barked instructions without looking at her face. Selena clung to the sheets, eyes rolling back as the scream tore from her chest. The baby came fast, slippery, red, real. She saw him. For a second, she was sure. A cry, a faint fleeting sound, rose into the stale hospital air. Her heart leapt. Her arms reached. "Let me hold him," she gasped. Her voice shredded. "Please." But the older nurse had already turned away. The baby was whisked into another room. Selena tried to rise. Her body failed her. She screamed. A doctor entered, glanced at her chart, muttered something clinical. "Stillbirth," the nurse said, scribbling on a clipboard. No eye contact. No explanation. "No, no," he cried. Selena shouted. "I heard him." "You're confused," the nurse replied. "You were unconscious." "I wasn't. I saw him, The nurse pressed a button. A second later, an orderly appeared. A syringe gleamed in his hand. "Don't," Selena begged. "Please, don't sedate me, I'm not crazy." The needle pierced her skin. Her scream turned into a whisper. Her limbs sagged. The ceiling turned to fog. And then, nothing. When she woke, it was noon. Her arms were empty. Her body numb. The sheets were fresh. The nurse was gone. A new nurse came in. Young, smiling too widely. She told Selena it had been a traumatic night, that she had delivered a stillborn, that she had cried hysterically and blacked out, that they'd taken care of everything. Selena demanded to see the body. "There's nothing to see," the nurse said softly. "The remains were handled according to policy. There has to be a certificate, a name, a form, something." The nurse avoided her eyes. "You weren't in a state to make those decisions." Selena tried to sit up. "Call the police. I want a lawyer. There's no one listed," the nurse said. "You didn't register an emergency contact. I want my child." "Miss Morrow, please calm down." But she didn't. She screamed until her throat cracked. She pulled the IV from her arm. She threw a tray at the wall. A doctor came. Another needle followed. This time, they kept her sedated for 48 hours. When she was discharged, it was through the back exit. She was given a brown envelope with her release papers, a generic prescription for anxiety, and a bus token. Her medical file said, postpartum psychosis, delusional behavior, grief-induced paranoia. She stood outside the hospital, shivering in the cold, watching mothers leave through the front doors with their newborns wrapped in blue and pink. Her belly still ached. Her milk had come in. Her body knew she had a child. The world insisted she didn't. No one called. No one came. The system that raised her washed its hands. Back at the shelter, the staff looked at her like she was diseased. "We heard what happened," one of them said. "It's tragic. But we can't accommodate someone with psychiatric red flags." She was given 3 days to leave. The whispers began. She made it up. She was never pregnant. She's doing it for attention. A post surfaced online. Teen claims hospital stole her baby. Gets sedated instead. The comments were cruel. A Reddit thread dissected her face. A TikTok labeled her unstable girl from the ward. She was unpersoned, erased. But she remembered every detail. And memory, when it's all you have, becomes your blade. 10 years later, a gala in Manhattan. Hundreds of guests, chilled champagne and velvet gowns. Cameras flashing, music pulsing. Ambrose Vane, billionaire tech mogul, steps onto the stage. Sharp suit, silver cufflinks. Smile rehearsed to perfection. He lifts a glass, begins a speech about innovation, legacy, the future. Then he stops. His chest tightens. His face pales. He stumbles. Gasps erupt. A waiter drops a tray. Ambrose clutches the podium, eyes wide, mouth trembling. One word escapes his lips. Selena. He collapses. People scream. Someone calls for help. Flashes pop like fireworks. Across the room, near the bar, a woman stares, older now. Wrinkled. Hands trembling. Her name is Mavis Dunn. She was a nurse once, at Briarfield State Hospital. She hasn't heard that name in a decade. She sets her wine glass down, steps back into the crowd. The camera freezes on Ambrose's face as he falls, and a secret nurse from Selena's past watches from the crowd. What hurts more than losing a child? Being told you never had one. Selena Morrow's body had barely healed when her mind was declared broken. 2 weeks after her discharge, a city-appointed psychiatrist signed the paper that labeled her officially delusional with postpartum dissociative tendencies. She never got to speak to him directly. He read her file, made his notes, and checked a box. The diagnosis was enough to revoke her placement in any standard foster living arrangement. Girls like her were liabilities. She was escorted to a state-run rehabilitation facility where the walls smelled like bleach and the staff smiled with clenched teeth. She stayed there 11 days. 11 days of sitting in therapy circles where no one listened, of being told memory can deceive, of swallowing pills that made her feel heavy and slow. Every time she brought up her child, the staff marked it as another fantasy episode. By the time they released her, deemed stable with supervision, she had nowhere to go. The shelter she'd once called temporary refused her return. The staff offered scripted apologies and said they had to prioritize women who were ready to move forward. That wasn't her, not in their eyes. She was a broken record stuck on a lie they didn't want to hear. Selena stood outside with a plastic bag of her belongings, 3 shirts, a pair of jeans, a journal, and nowhere to sleep. The January wind whipped against her skin. She walked for hours that night, through alleys and bus stops, refusing to cry. What haunted her most wasn't just the loss. It was the fact that no one even believed she had lost anything at all. Her feet took her back to the place where everything had begun. Briarfield State Hospital. She stood outside the emergency entrance for nearly 30 minutes, staring through the glass at the reception desk where her name had once been signed in. It was different now. New paint, different nurse. But the memory pulsed beneath her skin. She walked in. Calm. Controlled. "I need to speak to someone about a birth that occurred here," she said. The receptionist raised an eyebrow. "Are you a patient?" "No, but I was. My name is Selena Morrow. I gave birth here 12 weeks ago. The records say my child was stillborn." "That's not true," he cried. "He was taken. I just want someone to check the logs. Please." The receptionist stared, then tapped a few keys. "There's no record of a live birth under your name. Security has been called." "Don't do that," Selena said, voice rising. "Don't act like I'm crazy. I know what happened. Someone took him. I heard him cry. 2 guards appeared. They didn't raise their voices. They didn't ask questions. They just escorted her out, gently but firmly, as if she were a confused relative who had wandered into the wrong ward." Selena didn't resist. She just stared at the walls one last time as she walked out. The door shut behind her with a finality that cut deeper than any blade. For the next 3 nights, she slept behind a closed convenience store. The cold numbed her limbs, but the shame froze her soul. She stopped trying to convince people. She knew now the world didn't believe girls like her. And it never would. She wandered into a small stone church one morning, mostly for the warmth. A graying priest with tired eyes found her near the back pew, asleep on the wooden bench. He brought her food. He asked no questions. When she finally told him her story, he listened. Quietly. Patiently. Then he said something she didn't expect. Grief can fracture even the strongest minds. But that doesn't mean you're lying. It was the closest thing to belief she had heard in months. He offered her a room in the church's old rectory building. A cot. A blanket. Meals. In exchange, she cleaned the hallways and helped serve food on Sundays. She said yes. Not because it felt like hope, but because she was tired. The parish nurse came by twice a week and made quiet notes as Selena recounted her memories. Sometimes, she said, the mind creates comforting illusions after trauma. Selena smiled politely. She had stopped trying to argue. But every night, she wrote another letter to her child. She placed it in the box under the cot. Then came the whispers. First from the volunteer group that ran the shelter's donations. Then from 2 teenage girls at the soup kitchen line. They'd seen something online. Is that the girl who faked a baby for attention? She made the whole thing up. For money or something? A Reddit thread had surfaced. Someone from her old shelter had posted a story, twisted and cruel, accusing Selena of fabricating the entire pregnancy. Screenshots of her crying at the hospital were shared. Comments flooded in. Pathological liar. Another scammer trying to go viral. Take her to a psych ward. Selena read every word. She memorized them like scripture. Her face was now a punchline. She stopped leaving the rectory. She stopped speaking to the priest. She moved her box of letters to the back corner of the closet. Each morning she woke up hoping her body wouldn't. Until one evening, after serving soup in silence, she returned to her room and found a plain manila envelope on her pillow. No name. No return address. She opened it slowly, her fingers trembling. Inside was a single photograph. A baby, wrapped in a blue hospital blanket, face slightly turned, eyes closed. The timestamp in the corner read, 11:58 p.m., the night she gave birth. Selena dropped the photo. Her breath hitched. She picked it up again, hands shaking, stared at the details. The bracelet on the baby's wrist. The mark near his chin. He was real. She wasn't crazy. And someone out there wanted her to know it. A silent, anonymous envelope arrives at the shelter. Inside is a photo of a baby with a timestamp from the night Selena gave birth. She had no family, no baby, and no voice. But she still had her memory. When Selena Morrow left the church shelter, there was no farewell, no hug, no parting word. The priest who had once listened to her in silence had grown distant. Whether it was the rumors or the fear of scandal, he never said. He simply handed her a paper envelope with $50 and told her, "God be with you." For a moment, she almost asked which God believed her. She stepped into the cold again with a threadbare coat, a backpack of letters, and one photograph, the time-stamped image of a baby she was told never existed. That photo became her currency for hope, and even when she could barely feed herself, she never let it out of her sight. Selena began walking the late-night shift circuit. Diner cleanup, storage unloading, street window scrubbing. Anything under the table that didn't ask questions. She slept in bus stations during the day, eyes open, arms curled around her backpack. The letters she had written over the months became a ritual. Each one started the same. "If you're alive, I want you to know." They filled pages and pages. Her thoughts, her grief, her questions. She wrote as if her child could read through time. She hid them beneath her shirts, close to her chest, like sacred documents of a war she couldn't stop fighting. It was in the back alley behind a bakery that she met Miss Greer. An old woman in a faded head wrap, feeding cats from a cracked bowl. She saw Selena curled beside a dumpster and offered her a piece of stale bread. "You ain't no junkie," Miss Greer said. "You just look like the world's been beating you too loud." Selena didn't answer at first, but something about the woman's eyes, sharp but not cruel, made her pause. They sat together in silence until Miss Greer asked where she'd been sleeping. When Selena hesitated, she said, "I got a room in my basement. Dry. Ain't warm, but it don't leak. The basement was no bigger than a storage closet, with peeling walls and a rusted sink. But it was hers. Rent was $20 a week and helping with groceries. Selena agreed without blinking. Miss Greer never pried. She only said, "Everybody got their ghosts." Some just holler louder than others. Days bled into weeks. Selena's jobs changed, but her nights stayed the same. She wrote. She searched. On Sundays, she visited public records offices and scoured archived birth lists, trying to find any digital trace of her son. There was none. She didn't even know what name they had given him. She began walking through cemeteries, especially the public ones. Rows of stones with names, rows without. Infant, December 15. Baby boy, unknown. She stood before each unmarked grave and whispered apologies. Sometimes she screamed. One night she collapsed onto a patch of frozen soil and cried for so long the groundskeeper had to carry her out. Her grief had changed shape. It wasn't fire anymore, it was ice. Heavy and unmelting. But beneath it, something else was growing. Discipline. Patience. An anger that didn't shout anymore, but sharpened. Miss Greer noticed. "You got the look of somebody setting traps," she said. "That's a good thing. Means you ain't done yet." One night, as rain pounded against the basement windows, Selena asked Miss Greer why she never judged her. "I seen too many girls disappear to believe the ones who stay are crazy," she said. "I once knew a nurse who used to talk about a girl they hushed up. Long time ago. Back when I worked laundry for County Medical," Selena sat up. "What nurse?" Miss Greer squinted. "Ain't seen her in years. Told me once that some babies didn't die. Said some were placed. Never saw her again after that. Do you remember her name?" Selena asked, heart thudding. Miss Greer stood slowly, her knees cracking with age. "Don't remember it. But she gave me something once. Said to burn it if anything ever happened to her." She shuffled to the back of the apartment, past a broken cabinet, and into a closet Selena had never seen open. She pulled out a wooden drawer with careful fingers. Inside, wrapped in wax paper and tucked beneath a book of old sermons, was a tarnished hospital badge. A nurse's ID. The photo had faded, but the name was still legible. Miss Greer opens an old drawer and shows her something that belonged to a nurse who vanished 8 years ago. Truth costs something. Sometimes your safety. Miss Greer's cousin, Evelyn, ran a staffing agency for luxury events. Mostly last-minute hires for galas, political fundraisers, and society weddings. She owed Miss Greer a favor from years back, and when she heard Selena needed work, she offered her a weekend shift. It was quiet, simple, coat check, minimum wage. But it was indoors, clean, and above all, anonymous. Selena showed up to the address on the assignment card with her hair pinned back, makeup borrowed from Greer's medicine cabinet, and the stiff black uniform provided by the agency. The venue was a glass-walled mansion in the hills outside the city. Guests arrived in limousines and silk, their laughter floating in the winter air like money had never heard the word sorrow. The gala was hosted by the Vane Foundation. A charity front, Evelyn had said. High profile, high security, hands off. Keep your head down and your badge visible. Selena hadn't connected the name at first. Not until she saw the man arriving through the double doors, greeted by photographers. Ambrose Vane. The same man who had collapsed at the Manhattan Gala. The same man who had whispered her name before falling in front of a crowd. He looked older in person, more fragile up close. But it was him. And beside him, with her hand on his elbow, was a woman in a deep green gown. Sharp cheekbones, perfectly curled hair, and a cold gaze. Dahlia Vane. Selena's pulse jumped as she studied the woman's neckline. A thin gold chain hung against her collarbone. Attached to it was a locket, small, oval, ornate, identical to the one her baby wore in the time-stamped photo. Her knees nearly gave out. She steadied herself behind the coat check counter. The pendant spun slightly as Dahlia moved, catching the light. Selena's mind screamed. She wanted to run across the marble floor, rip the chain from the woman's neck, and demand answers. But she didn't. She watched. Waited. The event was a blur. speeches about global innovation, Ambrose thanking donors, laughter, wine, applause. Selena's eyes never left the couple. Every movement, every smile, every interaction, she observed it all. Later that night, when the guests began to leave, she slipped out the service exit and ducked into the back of the catering van. She didn't go home. Instead, she followed the Vane motorcade. 3 black vehicles, tinted glass. She kept her distance, following them on foot until they reached the estate, an iron-gated fortress outside the city. She memorized the layout, the security schedule, the blind spots. The next morning, she dressed in her agency uniform again and returned to Evelyn's office. "There's an opening for a weekend shift," Evelyn said. "Housekeeping. One of our clients in North Glen. Rich family. Super private." Selena nodded, feigning disinterest. "What's the name?" she asked. Evelyn glanced at the clipboard. "Vane." Selena blinked. "I'll take it." She arrived at the estate on Saturday morning with a cart of linens and a clipboard. No one questioned her. The staff was large, revolving, and managed by a cold, silent housekeeper named Magda who barely looked up. Selena kept her head down. She cleaned. She folded. She took mental notes. Every hallway, every camera, every entry point. She saw the boy once, through the window, playing in the courtyard, alone. Tennis shoes and a scarf. His face. It stopped her breath. He had her eyes, her cheekbones, a tilt of the head that mirrored a photo from her own childhood. She turned away before anyone saw her stare. That night, she slipped away from her assigned quarters and crept down the eastern hallway, where portraits lined the walls. She passed oil paintings of generations, Vanes in suits, pearls, and country estates. Then she saw it. A painting at the far end. The boy. Older in the painting. Maybe 10. A soft expression. Same cheekbones, same gaze. His name, written in brass beneath the frame, Ren Vane. Her knees buckled. She reached out and touched the frame. Her fingertips trembled. She didn't need a DNA test. She knew. She sneaks into the Vane estate posing as staff and finds a painting of a boy who looks exactly like her. Sometimes, hope wears the face of a stranger. The painting stayed in Selena's mind like a fever dream. Ren Vane. The boy who wore her eyes and smiled like someone she used to be. She didn't sleep that night. Not in the staff quarters. Not on the ride back to Miss Greer's. Her mind replayed every angle of his face. The way his chin tilted slightly upward like hers used to when she was curious, cautious, or pretending not to be afraid. For 2 weeks, she watched the estate from a distance. She memorized comings and goings. But it was Dahlia Vane who stood out. Her cold elegance. Her secrecy. The way she never smiled at the boy. She drove herself every Thursday morning. Same time, same route. To a small, unmarked building in the city's medical district. No logo. No listed clinic hours. The kind of place that existed for people who didn't want to be seen. Selena followed one day. She sat across the street in an idling laundry van with dark windows and a broken heater, watching through binoculars she'd bought from a pawn shop. Dahlia entered the side entrance. Always with an envelope. Always alone. Never more than 15 minutes. On the 4th visit, Selena followed her inside. She slipped through the side door before it fully closed, dressed like a courier, a clipboard pressed against her chest. The waiting room was white, silent, and empty. The receptionist looked up. "Appointment?" "I'm looking for Dr. Keaton," Selena said. The woman frowned. "Dr. Keaton doesn't take walk-ins." Selena leaned in. "Tell him it's about Briarfield Hospital. December 15. A girl named Selena Morrow. Tell him someone finally remembers." The receptionist's eyes shifted. She picked up the phone. 3 minutes later, Selena was led down a hallway to a quiet office. Dr. Keaton was older than she expected. Mid-60s, maybe. White coat, silver-rimmed glasses, hands that twitched slightly as he folded them on the desk. He didn't speak for a long moment after she introduced herself. "I know who you are," he said finally. "I remember you." Selena's throat tightened. "You were there." He looked down. "I was." She wanted to scream. She wanted to grab him by the collar and shake the answers loose. But instead, she whispered, "Then tell me what happened." Dr. Keaton took off his glasses and rubbed his temples. "You weren't the first, but you were the last. After your case, I couldn't do it anymore." Selena sat perfectly still. He continued, "Briarfield was part of something. A funnel. Poor, unaccompanied mothers were easy. No oversight. No families. No lawyers. Babies marked stillborn were processed into private adoptions. Quiet ones. Off the books. Purchased by foundations. Families. People who had the power to erase the records." Selena blinked. "You're telling me I wasn't wrong?" He met her eyes. "You were never wrong. You were screaming the truth in a room designed to make people doubt you." Her fists clenched on her knees. "And you let them take him?" He flinched. "I was a coward. I justified it for years. Said it was bigger than me. That these children would live better lives. But the lie doesn't quiet down, even when you stop listening." Selena felt like she couldn't breathe. Every word confirmed what she had fought to believe. Her body had known. Her grief had known. Her silence had not been madness. It had been memory. Dr. Keaton opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. He hesitated, then slid it across the desk. "After I left Briarfield, I kept certain documents. I knew someday someone would come knocking. Inside the folder were photocopies. Not many, not enough to shake the world, but enough to burn it down for someone. A delivery log, a forged death certificate, an adoption intake form. The baby's name had been reassigned post-delivery. The field for biological mother read, intake null. The adoptive parents were listed under private confidentiality seal. But the initial intake date matched December 15. The time, 12:02 a.m. Selena's hands trembled. "I didn't name him," she said. "They never let me." Dr. Keaton nodded. "But someone else did." He reached into the folder again, pulled out one last sheet. A photocopy of an internal handoff slip from the third-party agency that had processed the falsified adoptions. He pointed. The assigned name, Ren Vane. Selena stared at the letters until her vision blurred. Her breath came in short gasps. Her head fell into her hands. She wasn't imagining it. She wasn't haunted. Her baby was alive. Had a name. A life. A lie wrapped in silk and money and silence. She looked up at Dr. Keaton. "Why are you helping me?" He stared out the window. "Because guilt ages a man faster than time." Selena gathered the document slowly. Her hands were steady now. Her voice, colder. "I don't care how old this is. I'm going to expose it." Dr. Keaton nodded once. "You'll be in danger." "I've lived in danger since the day they took him." She stood. Walked to the door. He called after her. "Selena." She turned. Dr. Keaton held out a small flash drive. "Everything I've collected over the years. What you do with it, that's your test now." He gives her a name from the records. Her son's name, Ren Vane. With truth in her hands, the world suddenly seemed bendable. Selena didn't sleep for 3 days after leaving Dr. Keaton's office. Not from fear, but from fire. Something inside her had shifted. The way her spine aligned when she stood. The way her feet moved without hesitation. Truth had settled into her hands like steel. And now, finally, it could be used. She began quietly. She digitized every document from the folder, backed it up twice, on the flash drive and on cloud accounts under false names. She transcribed the names. She built a timeline. She created an evidence wall in Miss Greer's basement using laundry pins and frayed thread. It was amateur, obsessive, and airtight. Dr. Keaton stayed close. He passed names. Nurses who'd left in silence. Orderlies who'd witnessed more than they were paid to see. One by one, Selena reached out, disguised numbers, burner phones, coffee meetings in parking lots. Some hung up, some denied. But a few, just enough, answered. A nurse named Marcia, who remembered the baby that didn't die. An admin assistant who had processed a file marked hush clearance. A clerk who kept a photocopy of a ledger she wasn't supposed to touch. The puzzle filled. Then came the lawyer. Selena walked into a legal nonprofit that specialized in public record exposure and corruption cases. She had no appointment, no money, and no legal standing. But when she showed them the photo, the timestamp, and the falsified death certificate, someone called someone. By day's end, an intern was assigned to her. His name was Marlowe Quinn, 25, sharp, disillusioned with corporate law. He had a journalist's curiosity and a brother in foster care. Selena didn't trust him at first, but Marlowe didn't ask questions to doubt her. He asked them to build something stronger. They created aliases, built private folders, prepped an anonymous drop. The plan wasn't a lawsuit. Not yet. The plan was exposure. Truth moves faster online, Marlowe said. We push it from the shadows, make them play defense. Selena agreed. They wrote a dossier. Redacted names. Protected the innocent. Kept the focus on the institution. The victims. The paper trail. And when they hit publish, they didn't attach a name. The first leak went live at 3:12 a.m., an anonymous post on a niche legal forum about undocumented adoptions, with scanned evidence attached. By noon, it had spread to 3 subreddits and 1 investigative journalist's inbox. By the end of the week, podcasts were quoting it. A mid-level news station ran a segment titled, The Stillbirths That Weren't. Selena watched it all from Miss Greer's basement. She sat on the floor, laptop open, photo in hand. The media didn't name her, but the world was circling. And so were the veins. 2 days after the leak, Marlowe received a cease and desist from a private law firm. The address matched a vein-owned shell company. The document didn't accuse. It threatened. That same night, someone broke into Dr. Keaton's clinic. Files were untouched, but his laptop was smashed. His office ransacked. Selena didn't flinch. She pushed harder. Marlowe arranged a meeting with a mid-tier newspaper willing to publish an interview under complete anonymity. Selena gave it. Her voice altered. Her photo blurred. She told the truth. About the night. The baby. The scream. The silence. When it aired, the comment sections exploded. Monsters. If this is true, someone needs to burn. Find the child. Selena didn't cry. She watched the views rise like smoke from a city set on fire. And somewhere, in a penthouse surrounded by glass and marble, Dahlia Vane lifted a phone. She dialed. The voice on the other end answered with clipped silence. She knows, Dahlia whispered. And she's not backing down. Dahlia Vane makes a private call. She knows. And she's not backing down. Just when the truth is near, someone will sell you for less than it's worth. The news came in a single sentence, delivered through a voicemail from a shaken nurse. Dr. Keaton was found dead this morning. Car accident. Single vehicle crash. They're calling it weather-related. Selena dropped the phone. The world blurred for a moment. She fell into a chair in Miss Greer's kitchen, staring at the wall. The same wall where she had mapped the conspiracy. Where Keaton's name sat in the center. Her mentor. Her proof. Her one tether to everything real. Gone. The official report would list brake failure on a slick mountain road. No foul play suspected. No autopsy requested. Case closed in 72 hours. But Selena knew better. Keaton had driven that route for 15 years. He kept his car in meticulous condition. She had seen him clean it himself with a cloth too white for a man his age. They had silenced him. Miss Greer sat across from her, hands folded. You sure you still want this? She asked. Selena looked at her. He died for the truth. I don't get to walk away now. But the world had already started folding. The nonprofit law firm that had supported them for weeks sent a short email 2 days later. Due to growing concerns over security risks and resource allocation, they would be withdrawing legal representation and shuttering communications on the case. No names. No discussion. Just silence. Marlowe came to her in the basement that night, his face pale, holding a folder he didn't want to carry. They offered me a deal, he said. A law firm connected to the Vanes. They want everything, documents, interviews, the leak log. They're not denying it happened. They're trying to bury it under non-disclosure agreements. Selena stared at him. And? He looked down. They're offering 6 figures. I told them no. But I didn't delete the email. Selena stepped back. Do you believe me, Marlowe? He nodded. I've never stopped. But I'm scared. Then leave, she said. Take nothing. Say nothing. Go. But it was too late. The next morning, the internet changed its tune. A new wave of articles began flooding the feeds. Unstable former foster girl at center of false baby theft claim. Anonymous whistleblower exposed as mental health patient with history of delusion. The worst headline read, The Return of Selena Morrow. Still crying wolf after all these years. Her photo was everywhere. The pixelated hospital hallway image from years ago. Crying, barefoot, being escorted by security. They were rewriting the narrative. Word by word. Selena threw her laptop across the room. It shattered against the basement wall. Miss Greer held her afterward. For hours. Without speaking. I was almost out. Selena whispered. We were so close. The next day, police cruisers rolled past the neighborhood. A court summons arrived. Lawsuit pending. Harassment. Defamation. Emotional distress. The Vanes were coming after her with legal teeth. Marlowe returned that night. He didn't knock. He stood in the doorway, soaked in guilt. I leaked your name, he said. I told myself it wouldn't matter. That it was already out there. But I gave them the rest. The timeline. The footage. Everything. I needed the money. Selena didn't cry. She turned her back to him. I'm sorry, Marlowe whispered. Marlowe confesses he leaked her name for money, and the Vanes are suing her for harassment. She lost her baby twice. But this time, the world watched. They came with papers and uniforms. The landlord didn't look her in the eye. He left the eviction notice taped to the rusting mailbox beside Miss Greer's door. 30 days. No appeal. No hearing. Property value pressure, he said. But everyone knew the truth. Selena Morrow had become toxic. The neighborhood once whispered her name with pity. Now they whispered it with fear. Selena packed slowly. She folded the evidence wall into boxes, shredded copies of sensitive documents, buried the flash drive beneath floorboards in a Ziploc bag. The photograph she had carried for years, creased at the corners, still sharp at the eyes, she tucked inside her coat. Miss Greer protested. She wrote a letter to the council. She shouted at the landlord. But the notice was final. Days later, Miss Greer was found unresponsive in her bed. Heart failure, they said. Quiet. Quick. Unseen. Selena held her hand until they took the body away. The city didn't offer condolences. It offered silence. Then came the police. She was arrested outside a municipal archive building. She had returned to request sealed hospital records, using the name of a nurse she believed had participated in the illegal adoptions. The clerk stalled. Selena insisted. Security was called. When they asked her to leave, she didn't. When they touched her arm, she snapped. The mugshot appeared in tabloids within hours. Baby theft accuser booked for trespassing. The same networks that once whispered about injustice now painted her as a public threat. Mentally unstable. Dangerous. Delusional. Marlowe had vanished. The nonprofit shut its doors. She used her one call to contact no one. When she was released, her name was Ash. The shelters wouldn't take her. No job would hire her. She walked for miles with a trash bag full of memories, a hollowed-out phone, and one coat too thin for the wind. She returned to the basement once more. Empty now. Quiet. Dust curling in the corners. There, in the far corner, under the cot, was the box of letters. Hundreds of them. She opened the last one she had written, read the ink through her tears, folded it once, lit it with a match. It curled, blackened, turned to ash in her hand. I'm done, she said to the walls. You win. Then came the knock. It was soft, unsure. Selena didn't answer at first. She thought it was another officer, another landlord, another lie. But the knock came again. She opened the door. And there he stood. A boy, 12, pale face, blue coat, red sneakers, wide eyes. He held a folded newspaper in his hand. "I saw your face in the news," he said. His voice was quiet, not fearful, just searching. "My name is Ren." A boy, 12 years old, appears at her doorstep. He says, "I saw your face in the news. My name is Ren. Truth is not loud, it's patient." Selena stared at the boy in the doorway. Her body froze. Her heart didn't beat, it braced. He held the newspaper like a shield and studied her like a mirror. "I saw your face," he said again. "I've been trying to find you." His name was Ren. He told her this with the certainty of someone who knew the truth would change everything. He came alone, no driver, no bodyguard, no surveillance trailing behind. Just a bus pass, a hidden note, and a folded map he'd taken from his school backpack. Inside, Selena offered him water, a chair, the last pieces of warmth she could find in the basement that no longer felt like shelter. She tried to keep her voice steady, but nothing about her felt steady. "How did you find me?" she asked. He pulled out a sheet of paper, lined and torn. A copied article. "The first leak Marlowe helped post. I found it in my dad's study. He keeps files on people he says are dangerous. Your name was everywhere." Selena's hands trembled. "Does he know you're here?" Ren shook his head. "I used a field trip to leave. I don't want to go back. I don't think I'm supposed to be there." She studied him. The lines of his face. The way he bit his lip when nervous. She remembered doing that as a child. Remembered writing about it in the first letter she'd ever sent to a child who wasn't dead. "Ren," she said gently, "you don't have to be afraid. But I need to be honest. This could hurt you. The story. The truth." He looked at her, dead center. "Lies already hurt me," he said. She didn't hug him. She couldn't. Not yet. Her body didn't know how to believe this was real. That night, he stayed on the cot. She slept in the chair. She watched over him like she should have 12 years ago. In the morning, a message came. Blocked number. Unknown source. One sentence. "I used to clean their house. I heard more than I was supposed to. I'm ready to talk." The maid's name was Lita. She had worked in the Vane estate for 8 years. Fired without reason 6 months ago. She met Selena in a library parking lot 2 towns over. Lita brought a phone. Inside it were voice memos. Private conversations. Dahlia speaking about adoptions. About strategic acquisitions. About the cost of silence. One file had Ambrose's voice. Faint. Frustrated. "We took her child, Dahlia. We didn't rescue him. We bought him." Selena felt her chest crack open. Lita placed the phone in her hand and whispered, "I always knew he didn't belong to them." They hugged. Brief. Silent. Not for comfort, but for confirmation. Selena knew what came next. They needed proof that no one could argue with. She and Ren took the test in secret, at a walk-in clinic 30 miles out. Cash only. No names. The technician handed her the envelope 2 weeks later. Stamped and sealed. She opened it in the quiet of the library bathroom. Alone. The answer was written in 6 words. Probability of maternity, 99.99987%. A new DNA test, taken in secret, confirms Ren is her biological son. One truth can silence 1,000 lies, if spoken loud enough. Selena Morrow didn't step into the courthouse as a ghost anymore. This time, her name was printed on banners. Her photo filled social feeds. Her voice had been heard and believed. What started as anonymous whispers in online forums had become a full-blown civil suit. Morrow v. Vane Foundation, Briarfield State Hospital, and the state of New York. This time, she had weight behind her. Her legal team was built from volunteers, civil rights attorneys, and a retired federal investigator who had seen enough corruption in his time to recognize what they were up against. The case documents were meticulous. The recordings from Lita, the testimony from surviving nurses, the handwritten notes from Dr. Keaton, and above all, the DNA test confirming that Ren Vane, legal son of America's most discreet billionaire couple, was biologically hers. The court filing hit the press within hours. Selena's name shot to national headlines. For years, the world had either ignored or ridiculed her. But now they saw her through a different lens. Not as a conspiracy theory, not as a broken girl, but as a mother who never stopped looking. Major outlets requested interviews. Law journals began calling it one of the most significant child welfare lawsuits in a decade. The case brought attention not only to the veins, but to decades of systemic abuse across state hospitals. For every Selena, there were dozens whose voices had been swallowed. Her first TV appearance was streamed by over 5 million viewers. She sat across from a seasoned journalist and told her story in 3 parts. The birth, the silence, the return. "We call it justice," she said on live television. "But what I want is something much smaller and harder to win. I want the truth to matter again." Behind her, Ren stood quietly. He didn't need to speak. His face, his blood, and the way he looked at her spoke enough. The internet ignited. Social media exploded. Hashtags surged. Memes turned into movement. Journalists from independent outlets and national networks tore into the original Briarfield files. Whistleblowers emerged from multiple hospitals across the Northeast, emboldened by Selena's courage. And then came the smear campaign. The Veins released a 12-page statement. They denied wrongdoing, claimed they had legally adopted Ren through a licensed intermediary, that they had no idea about any wrongdoing in his origin file. Their lawyers argued that the timeline was manipulated, the DNA test, possibly forged, that the audio recordings were taken without consent and digitally tampered. They tried to reframe the narrative again. Selena was unstable, opportunistic, emotionally unfit. But this time, the world wasn't listening to them. A counterstatement from the hospital's former administrator surfaced. Anonymous, but direct. "Yes, these things happened. Yes, we were told to destroy the paper trails. No, we didn't all follow orders." The tide had turned. Ren's school classmates walked out in protest, holding signs, "Truth has a name, it's Ren." College students launched a campaign demanding full federal investigation into underground adoptions and sealed hospital records. Donations surged past $2 million, enough to fund the legal team for a year. Then, in a twist no one predicted, a former federal clerk who had processed adoption seals came forward. She handed over copies of 2 falsified records, one of them with Dahlia Vane's signature on a line marked pre-approval acquisition. It was the first documented proof that Dahlia had known about the illegal process from the beginning. Public sentiment flipped. News anchors stopped calling her Mrs. Vane. They began calling her the accused. Ambrose Vane, meanwhile, was spiraling. Footage leaked from a donor event. He appeared pale, confused, slurring words. When a protester in the crowd shouted Selena's name, he visibly staggered. Moments later, he collapsed. The video made headlines. Again, hashtag Ambrose faints trended. But so did hashtag Return Ren and hashtag Free Selena. The court date was set. But Dahlia didn't show. Instead, a red-eye flight flagged by customs officials was intercepted at JFK's private tarmac. In her possession were 2 fake passports, a briefcase of encrypted drives, and a flight plan to Zurich. She never made it past the gate. Dahlia is arrested trying to flee the country with private adoption records. She never asked for revenge, just her child. The courtroom was packed. Not with cameras or reporters, though they waited outside, but with faces who knew her story. Faces who had followed her journey not as spectators, but as believers. Women who had written her letters. Former nurses. Survivors. Advocates. And in the second row, clutching a small worn photograph, sat Ren. He had asked to testify. He'd written a statement. But Selena told him he didn't have to speak. That his presence was the loudest truth. When the judge read the verdict, Selena didn't cry. Full and permanent legal custody awarded to Selena Morrow. The adoption contract between Ambrose and Dahlia Vane is hereby nullified due to fraud and concealment. There were no cheers, just silence. Deep and reverent. Selena bowed her head. She didn't look for the Vanes. Dahlia remained in federal custody, facing separate charges. Ambrose had withdrawn from public life entirely. His attorneys had issued one final statement: "We believed we were helping. We see now that we were wrong." The hospital board issued a formal apology. A full federal investigation was launched into sealed birth records and illegal private adoption channels. Dozens of administrators and doctors were placed on leave. Some resigned, others were subpoenaed. Selena never returned to the hospital. But she passed it sometimes. On the bus, on walks, and every time, she would squeeze Ren's hand just a little tighter. They moved into a small apartment in Queens. Nothing extravagant. Just enough space for her letters, his books, and one table by the window where they did homework and shared soup. She enrolled Ren in a new school. Quiet. Local. The principal pulled her aside one day and said, "He's kind. A little too grown. But kind." Publishers reached out. 7 book offers. 3 podcast series. A major studio in LA wanted the rights. Selena turned them all down. "I didn't do this for the story," she told them. "I did it for the boy who needed to come home." But she agreed to one final interview, a national broadcast. A mother's voice, steady, without drama. "What do you want now?" the host asked. Selena looked into the camera. "Peace. And for women like me to never be doubted so easily again." The ratings were record-breaking. On the anniversary of Ren's birth, she returned to a cemetery on the city's edge. The sky was gray. The wind soft. She found the grave easily. A small stone, tucked in the corner. It read "Unknown Infant, December 15. For years, she'd visited it, whispering apologies, grieving a child she thought she'd lost. This time, she came with a plaque. She bent down, dug gently, and replaced the stone. The new one read, "Ren Morrow, found. Loved. Alive." She visits a cemetery and replaces a headstone marked "Unknown" with a real name. Motherhood isn't proven by biology, it's proven by fight. It's quiet now. Not the kind of silence that hides things, but the kind that holds them gently. Selena wakes up in a home that doesn't feel temporary. She makes coffee. She watches Ren pack his school bag. He's taller now, his voice deeper, his questions sharper. The trauma hasn't vanished, it lingers, but the shadow doesn't lead him anymore. He's in high school. A freshman. A boy who reads case files more than comics. Who once asked her, "Do you think I was meant to find you?" And waited for an answer not of certainty, but of hope. Selena now works for a foundation that investigates birth theft, undocumented adoptions, and institutional corruption. She doesn't go on TV anymore. She goes to courtrooms, to shelters, to hospitals. Her name opens doors, but it's the scars on her hands that speak loudest. Every month, she receives letters. From girls. From mothers. From women who didn't know how to tell their stories until hers showed them how. She keeps them in a box, next to another, an older one. It contains every letter she ever wrote to Ren during the years she thought he was gone. Nearly 400 pages of grief, fury, longing, and love. She has never read them aloud. But she told Ren, "They're yours. When you're ready." Sometimes he touches the box. Not to open it, just to feel its weight. Some days are hard. The story still chases them in online comments or awkward stares. But more often, it gives them something. A nod from a stranger, a whispered thank you in a courtroom hallway. Justice wasn't given to her. It was clawed for. Bought with time and pain. Paid in scars. She carries them proudly. She doesn't call herself a hero, just a mother who remembered, and refused to let the world forget. The last scene is simple. Selena standing outside the new shelter her foundation helped open. A young girl walks in. Pregnant, scared, alone. Selena holds the door open for her and says, "You're not alone anymore." And to the viewers this question, would you believe a girl like Selena if she told you her child was stolen? Or would you be part of the silence? Now that you know her story, would you have believed her or turned away like the rest? Don't just watch. Feel. Let her fight mean something. Subscribe for more true stories the world buries and silence tries to erase. And tell us in the comments, what if it was your child they took?